And we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this month's Hangout on Air, where we talk all about One Place Studies. I'm Alex. I'm one of the committee members for the Society for One Place Studies. My place is in Wing in Buckinghamshire, England. You might have noticed I don't sound particularly like a native. That's because I was born and live in New Zealand. It's currently early o'clock in the morning here. It's a bit more of a respectable time for most of you. Today we're going to be talking about future-proofing your one-place study. This is a topic that is actually great for those just beginning your one-place study, as well as for old hands, as it gets you thinking about the smartest way to collate and structure your research and your resources. Not only will that make it easier for you while you're undertaking your one-place study, it's also going to be easier for whoever might become the caretaker of your study after you're gone. Now, bear with me. Oh, have to click the buttons in the correct order, which I have not done. One moment. Okay, can everyone see that? Yep. Excellent. Okay, we're going to start on a bit of a somber note today. In loving memory of your one-place study, born a number of years ago and died recently, a loved one sleeping. Let's be honest, one-place studies can be quite a lot of work. Now, you wouldn't want all that work to go to waste or be inaccessible down the track, and this does happen. There have been studies which have had websites that had quite a lot of material on their website, and then the one-place studier behind it has passed away. The website hasn't been renewed, disappears, and then all that material is lost. I'm aware of one case where some of the individual web pages can be found on the Internet Archive website, but most of it was in separate files, like spreadsheets and PDFs and things, rather than on the HTML pages, and all those extra bits didn't get archived. So to all intents and purposes, that material's gone. That's a real shame, both for historians and family historians interested in that place, and for anyone else out there who might want to pick up on that work and continue on that particular study. We don't want that to happen to our studies, obviously. Eventually you won't be there to continue on with your study. Some point down the track, either you will pass away, or for health reasons, or just life gets in the way, you might not be able to continue. And then what can you do now to plan for that eventuality? In order to future-proof your one-place study, you'll want to think about three things. Who, so who might want to use it, or store it, or take it over. What material you've got available as part of your study. And how are you going to transfer the custody of everything when the time comes. And you generally do need to think about it in that order, because the who will often help determine the what and the how go about things. So we'll look at the who first. Here are some options that might work for your study. Firstly, a regional family history society. So what region or regions does your place fall into? Is there a dedicated family history organisation for that region? If there is, they'll certainly be quite keen on your study, as it's potentially very useful for their members, and maybe they would be in a position to take over your study or take custody of it. There may be a regional history society. So a society that's interested in more general history, not just family history, but again, that could be a good one. You could hand your study over to them. Regional archives. This is good, particularly if you've got a lot of original material and documents, as that's sort of 100% what they do, they're archives. And even if you don't have archives per se, your research might actually be a useful addition to their holdings, so they could be interested.
Alex, we can only see your first slide. I don't know why that might be.
So it's not...
It's just on the, as if you haven't started slideshow.
And it's showing
Ah,
the other slides down the side, Alex.
okay. Hold on.
That's good. Now we're seeing a different slide.
So it's obviously not working on the full screen then.
No, it's not on full screen, no.
Okay, so we might have to just... Is that actually readable? We might have to stick it...
Yes, I can read it.
Yeah, I can read it.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure why the slideshow itself isn't working. Unless there's another button I should have... From the beginning.
You should have a thing that says
Not
view show somewhere at the top.
Yeah, which is what I'm doing.
Is that the second one in where it says from current slide?
Yeah, it should,
Yes,
that should
yeah.
work, shouldn't it?
I hit that and it full screens on my screen, but obviously not yours.
How strange.
So, yeah, sorry, I think we're going to have to...
We can read it anyway, so that's okay.
Yeah.
Just initially it wasn't moving on, so all we were seeing, you'd moved on, but your slide hadn't.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll continue on. It's a little bit smaller for everyone. Sorry about that. You'll have to listen to my lovely voice and make up the gaps while you're reading. Okay, so we talked about our regional history societies and archives. Now, a local library. So if your place is big enough to have its own library, I'd imagine they would also be interested to find out what you've got available. So they generally want to have a complete record of anything concerning their place, particularly any publications and things. So if you've got printed materials, they would love to see those. A local museum. So if you've got physical objects related to your one place study, again, that'll prick their ears up and might take your whole study along with it. A local history group. So some one place studiers work on their own, but some work as part of a group or in conjunction with a local history group. Janet, I believe you do that for your study. So if you're already part of a group, that's pretty good, because if you suddenly cease to be, the other members of the group are going to have an idea of what you're working on and what records you have, and there's a natural transition there. So in my case, I work alone on my study, but there is a wing heritage group made up of residents in wing interested in its history and family history. So there is already this ready-made pool of people who would definitely not want my work to go missing in action and would be keen to get their hands on it. So they might not continue it on in quite the same way that I've been doing things, but they were probably the best place to care for it. You may have an apprentice or a fellow enthusiast. So is there someone that you've been in touch with who's also got a passion for your place and your study? They might be interested in taking it over. And it would be pretty handy to have an apprentice who could help you out now and take over down the track. And then, of course, there's the wider public via publication. So if you can publish your work with solid source citations, that would mean it would live on as a resource, even if it's not being added to. So the more information you can get out there now and distribute it as widely as possible makes it more likely that it wouldn't be lost, even if the study is discontinued because no one takes it over. The publishing, in its widest sense of the word, is generally one of our goals anyway. You just have to make sure that it happens and it's as high a quality as you can achieve at that time. So that's a variety of places who might be interested in your study, in your archives, if you like. There's some in there that would just be a repository for your material, and some other options where the study itself would have a smooth transition and continue on in the future. And you've probably got some personal preferences about which way you'd like to go, and who you'd like to talk to first to see if you can make that happen. And so now you've decided the who, you could think about the how it would happen. So if they're an established organisation, they may have an acquisition policy and existing process around that. So you'd want to meet with them and discuss, are they even interested? So you may think that your study would make a nice acquisition for them. They may not feel the same way. You just don't know what their current priorities are, and those priorities might change in the future anyway. So what specifically would they be prepared to take on? And they undoubtedly have their preferences on this. They may have space restrictions on what physical material they can take. And they may have IT policies that affect what you can hand over digitally. So they may be able to take sort of everything you've got and work with it, or they may not. You know, they will have other considerations affecting what they are prepared to take on. How do they want it organised? So realistically, no organisation is going to want to take on a disorganised collection of stuff and then have to put in a lot of work making sense of it, reorganising it so that it can be archived or displayed or whatever they intend to do with it. So if you understand now how they would prefer it to be set up, then you can start putting that in place for them now. And they've probably got some pretty good ideas that you could incorporate so that your study material works both as an ongoing working resource for you and as an archival resource for them down the track. So steal their good ideas. How do they want it handed over? They might have a formal intake procedure for acquisitions. And if so, you're going to want to know, what is that formal procedure? Do you know who you're supposed to contact? Do you know when to contact them? And what is actually going to happen as part of that handover? That's particularly important if there's some lead time involved in a handover. So you wouldn't want your study to get dumped in the bin just because there was nowhere to store it in the meantime, and it all got a bit hard for whoever was responsible for handing it over at the end of the day. Or just got a bit hard for the person you're handing it over to. You know, the timing just didn't work for them, and then all the plans fall apart. So this is obviously the kind of conversation you want to have with your who in advance. So you can find out if your thoughts as to where your study should go is actually realistic and compatible with their thoughts. Another thing you actually want to remember is that it's not really fair to expect someone else to have to go through that process if you're no longer around or capable of doing it. So that person won't, if you've got someone else having to do that, they're not going to be as familiar with what you have as you are. So you taking the initiative and thinking about that in advance is the way to go there, and helps them out, helps everyone out. There's a good resource out there, Thomas McKenty, who many of you will know. He is behind the Genealogers website, Hack Genealogy, High Def Genealogy, and a variety of other online genealogy initiatives. He's recently published a book talking about this from a broader genealogy perspective. And in that book, he had a chat to one of the libraries in Chicago about their acquisition policy and process, and that's actually a really interesting read. It sort of sheds light and helps you think about things from the other side, the other perspective. So I would recommend that you have a look at that. Now, if your who isn't a formal organisation, so it's not archives or a library or something sort of set up with a formal acquisition policy, the same sort of discussion points are still really the best practice here. You know, you need to find out, are they definitely keen, and talk about how it might all play out in advance of it actually playing out. Now, assuming your ghost isn't that great at lugging around boxes and the like, and the handover isn't one that you're likely to do while you're still around and capable of doing it. Someone else is going to have to sort it out for you. So who is that? So talk to your family and whoever that might be. Could be you, could be a family member, could be someone else. Hopefully you do have someone in your life who understands how important your one place study is to you and how valuable it is to others and is prepared to help you out with this. But then do they know what that plan is and who to contact, where everything is, and how to make it all happen? So there's quite a bit of work there organising and planning for that, and multiple people involved. So now we'll talk about the what. This is where it's not just a benefit to whoever takes on your study, it's going to be a benefit to you too, as it will hopefully mean that you're better organised and more structured in what you do in your study. If you've got better notes about what you're up to, that will also help you. I'm sure we've all had the experience that we're working on particular little sub-projects within our one place study. We've got to put them aside for whatever reason, and then we try and pick them up again later, might be months or years later, and it's actually very confusing trying to figure out what we were doing, where we're up to, what we've looked at, what we haven't, unless you've taken really good notes at the time. I always intend to, it never quite happens that way. It's often you don't know that you're going to be putting things down and picking them up later. Now, so for the what, in our last Hangout on Air, now that's available to watch on our YouTube channel at any time if you missed it live. We've got lots of interesting previous Hangouts and conference sessions there, and all with a one place study focus. Although if you are not a one place studier, they are still pretty interesting from a general family history perspective as well. So do check out our YouTube channel. In particular, this last Hangout on Air, where our topic was three-dimensional one-place studies. And so there we were talking about sort of physical material and memorabilia that we had for our studies. And there's a bit of a show and tell of particular items that people had and what the stories were behind those items and how they fitted into their one-place study. So you might be lucky enough to have some items like that, or you might just have some physical documents. But either way, you've likely got physical material to consider. So my physical material is just one biggish but not too big box. I know other people have quite a lot more physical material in their collection for their study. So you'll need to identify what you've got that's actually got value, because just because you have it doesn't mean it has value. And conversely, its value might not be obvious, particularly to anyone else who isn't familiar with it. I think on that last Hangout, someone had a bottle from the bottle factory from their place. And obviously, someone could come along and say, this is just a piece of old glass, let's toss it out. And you would want to know that this was connected to this factory, and it was actually an integral part of sort of understanding the families that owned that factory and the place and the role that that factory played in that place. So it's actually quite important to the study, but you definitely don't want someone to come along and just go, oh, I don't know what this is, toss it. The significance might not be apparent, the value might not be apparent to someone else. It might even have a monetary value as well as historical significance. You want to say, is anything of value identifiable, and do you need to actually spell out why something has value? If you're like me, you've probably got quite a lot of papers for your one-place study, but very few are actually original documents. So in my case, most are printouts of digital versions of things, like census pages or newspaper articles or whatever. And it might be that it was practical to have those things physically printed out while you were actually working on a particular project or topic for your study, but you might not need those printouts anymore. You just haven't got around to tossing them yet. And thinking about handing over records really does make you think about whether you're just taking up unnecessary space in your study, in your house. So obviously anything where what you have is the original, that's important to keep, and also making sure the fact that it is the original is important. But for the rest, maybe now is a good time to ditch it, but maybe not. Maybe your WHO has indicated that they'd actually prefer physical paperwork, so a well-organised physical archive being handed over is a priority for them, in which case making sure you've got a complete physical set of everything is important. So if you've got something physical of value, you may also have additional information about it, so whether that's in your head or whether that's amongst your records. It's a smart idea to try and match those things up so everything's all in one place. And that's going to make it much easier for anyone following in your footsteps to get the whole picture at once. When you're looking at your physical material, can it be digitised? And is that actually going to be easier, have it going the other way? So if you've already decided that something's got value to your one-place study, you won't want to lose the only copy you've got. So digitising's likely to also make it easier for you and others to access it. So digitising might mean photographing it or videoing, might mean scanning documents, might mean converting old cine film to DVD. So it just depends on what you've got available there and the best way to digitally store a copy of that. So moving on to digital material now, even if you're very well organised, I bet taking an inventory of the digital material that you've got will surprise you. So some things here that you might want to think about. Firstly, is it all in one place? So I've got a Wing One Place Study directory on my computer, and everything sits in subfolders under that. And then when I actually thought about it, it's like, maybe it doesn't. So right now, I know I've got some files and records on a USB drive that I haven't transferred onto the computer yet. In Evernote, I've got some to-do lists and random notes and pieces of research lurking in there. Over in Outlook, I've got the best part of 10 years worth of emails that I don't have copies in the main One Place Study directory. In Dropbox, I've got a One Place Study folder there as well. And I bet there's things lurking all over the show that actually should be in my One Place Study directory, and it's not. So there's bits on my hard drive, there's bits up in the cloud, all over. So even with the best intentions, things do get scattered. So do you actually know where everything is? And can you bring it all together again? Make it easier. Is your digital material well structured? So things evolve over time. So even if you started out with a place for everything and an idea in your head about where everything was supposed to go, that might not quite work for you anymore, and it might not work for your successor either. So while we're thinking about this, it's a good time to revise things and come up with a structure that works for everything and everyone. Just have a bit of a housekeeping exercise there. You'll want to make sure that the source of documents is apparent in your material. Maybe you're really keen, you've added metadata to all your files indicating where things came from, or you've got other tags or comments attached to those files to help you find things. Maybe document management software might work for you. And particularly if you work as part of a group, document management software might be even more applicable, because generally that's got features like you can keep track of who is checking files in and out to work on them, and keeping track of different versions of documents as they change. So that might be something to consider there. Are the links between materials clear to everyone? So similar to the idea that the physical memorabilia doesn't automatically convey all the information about it, and you need to sort of collate that together, the same concept might also apply to your digital material as well. So quite a few of us have looked at the gravestones for our place. So if you've done a gravestone survey, you've probably got a mix of photos and maps and transcription documents. So however you've transcribed that. But those different digital documents and things might be scattered about, because I know in my case I've got photos in a different place to my transcriptions. So if someone was to come along and look at my digital documents, they might not realise sort of, you know, this document here plus this photo plus this thing sort of forms a set. So maybe you need to structure things so they sit together, or that those links are apparent. What types of files do you have, and what software do you need to open them? So here, using open source formats is best, and keeping an eye on changes in IT matters generally, so that you don't end up with an old version of something that can no longer be read. So you don't want that to happen. And digital files can get corrupted at some point along their journey, which means they can't be opened. Sometimes you'll find things will open just fine on one computer but not another. So that's sort of a warning sign that you might need to do something about those and possibly get them converted. So you want to use lossless formats for image files, and making sure you've got images stored as high as resolution as possible to help future-proof those. Now, if you use either traditional family history software for your one-place study or other software like Custodian or Clues or Evidentia to record OPS information, is that actually apparent amongst your files? Now, would your successor know that you're using that software? What version of that software are you using? What license keys do you need, and are those transferable to someone else? Are the databases actually stored in your main OPS files directory, or is it stored somewhere else? Now, what about any customized reports or the like that you might have come up with in those programs? If you were going to transfer that software, assuming you could transfer that software to someone else, do those have to be sort of backed up, transferred, imported across separately? So don't just take an inventory of your files, you'll also need to take an inventory of your software that you use for your study. And think about what someone else would need to know in order to get up and running with that software and your data. So don't forget about records that aren't actually on your computer. So what OPS related material do you have online? Is it all accessible, and what logins do you need? So particularly here you want to think about your One Place Study website if you have one. So do you have backups? Do you have an offline copy? How would you go about transferring the ownership of your domain name and website to someone else? How easy is that process? You know, if you save a backup of your website, is that something that you can only restore to the exact same version of the website software that you were using when you did that backup? And do those backups actually take everything? You might find in practice that extra bits like media files or customizations, pretty important, get left behind and aren't actually in the backup when you thought they were. So for longevity, it would be best if you can get things out in a non-proprietary and easily editable format. That way it's going to be easier for someone else to sort of pick up and edit, incorporate it elsewhere if need be. So in summary, you'll need to come to an arrangement with the who, have a chat to them, agree on the what, organise the what. That's obviously going to be an ongoing job, and probably quite a big job as well, and plan for the how. So you'll need to revisit your plan from time to time to make sure there's been no changes at the other end for whoever might be taking on your study, so it is an ongoing thing. You don't want to leave your successor wondering what on earth is that when they're trying to wade through your physical or digital material, and you don't want to leave your adoring public lamenting the loss of all your hard work. We've got some extras here, some other useful material on this topic. So the book I mentioned earlier by Thomas McKenty, it's called After You're Gone, Futureproofing Your Genealogy Research. A lot of you will be familiar with Dear Myrtle. Now on Extreme Genes, Family History Radio episode 92, which was a few months ago, she was interviewed there talking about keeping your stuff alive even when you're not, was the way they phrased it. And she talked quite a lot there about the importance of digitising everything to make that easier. Over on our website, we've got an older article which I wrote a while back called Till Death Us Do Part, Estate Planning for Your One Place Study. And if you are a premium member of Genealogy Gems, I believe Lisa once created a genealogical materials directive. So a bit that goes along with your will, sort of specifying, here's what I've got, here's where it needs to go to, here are the contact people, whatnot. And so if you're a premium member there, you should be able to download that document. All right.
Welcome back.
So yes, welcome back everyone. So has anyone currently got a formal plan in place for what might happen to their one place study?
No.
No, it's one of those things that we all think we're going to be very good and get around to, and we never quite do.
It's tricky because I don't have any children. My husband's not in the slightest bit interested. So I have no idea who to leave mine to. And the most likely place would be the Suffolk Record Office. But they don't want anything digital. They just want it all in bits of paper.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, so it's important to know now that that's how they want it. So so maybe you want to look out for anyone that contacts you with roots in Debenham that you might be able to coerce into taking over your study at some point down the track or helping you out.
Your best friend.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Janet.
What have you got?
Me? Well, I've got 3 places, 2 of which are sort of a little bit on the dormant side at the moment. And for one of them, we do have a society, which clearly has huge advantages for longevity, because you just, hopefully when I can't do it anymore, somebody else will be coming along and be interested as well. Of course, the downside of that is that you do have to be prepared to share. And I wondered whether I would be able to do that. And actually, I found it really easy. Although I'm kind of a bit of a lone wolf naturally, so I was quite surprised that I was able to share. And it's great because a lot of them do all the bits I'm not so interested in, and I've got a wonderful group of people who are very, very active. So I'm not so worried about that side. It does have a website. That's only a part of it. Other people have the logins. It's not tied to my own personal email. It's tied to a generic email address and things like that. So providing they look at the instructions, they could pick it up if I fell under a bus tomorrow. I mean, and as long as that is maintained and changes are made regularly, that will still be there. I do have an awful lot of stuff that is in my house, which is kind of stuff that I personally have collected, which I would hope would go to the group. Whether they can actually make sense of it is another matter. My other studies, there is material in print on both of those that I have generated. However, that's by far from being the whole story on either of those studies. So I mean, this is I know of people who've left money in their wills to have their websites continued ad infinitum. But the trouble is, we have no conception now what is going to be the way of communicating in 20 years' time, let alone 100 years' time. I'm a bit of a fan of paper, I must admit, because it's lasted so many hundreds of years. I kind of almost think that might be the best bet, but I know it's not a popular.
I'm not convinced our modern paper would last 100 years, to be honest.
Well, I mean, think of the documents we're looking at, though. You see, but then of course they're decent paper, not modern paper, as you say. Yeah.
Yeah, and not things printed off on your wee inkjet printer at home. It isn't going to last very long at all. Yeah.
I was looking at a receipt that I've got for something that's only a matter of a few months old, and already it's so faded that you just can't read it. And, I mean, I know that particular printer's not a particularly good one, but you've got to have a blooming good printer, decent printer, and decent paper for it to last any length of time, and keep it stored in acid-proof plastic thingy what's.
Yeah, we just don't go about things in an archival manner.
No.
That's sort of the problem here. Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be nice to work as part of a group. So I sort of envy Janet on that one a bit, because I think it does actually make life easier. Yeah, once you're prepared to relinquish a bit of control in exchange for all the benefits that you get from doing that, and particularly if you're talking about having your study continue on. I think it's one of the best ways to do it.
What about you, Kim?
You know, I was feeling pretty good before the hangout started. And I thought, well, gosh, I don't have much in the way of physical memorabilia, so I've got things, almost everything in electronic form, and I think I've got a sane folder structure, and I've got my dear husband. I kind of thought, well, he's younger than me, and I thought, well, you know, he could find the files and give them to someone, you know. Hey, I'm muchly afraid, Janet, he might find your name and just ship them all over, and
Oh, thanks.
probably not the best thing. So I think this has made me think a lot. We have 2 one-name studies as well, and I think that in reality he would be probably much more concerned about preserving those, because we work on those together, but he really doesn't know. You know, I mean, he knows that I have a one-place study and that it's important to me, but he doesn't really participate in that study. So, and in addition, Alex, when you started saying, well, I got stuff in Dropbox and I got stuff here and there, I thought, oh gosh, you know, I thought all my migration stuff is on a separate laptop in my course folders, and I got stuff on the website, and I got stuff on the Google Drive, and I think you're absolutely right. So now I'm just not feeling very good at all, to be honest with you. A long time ago, with our first one-name study, we printed out the tree, which has all the notes in it, and printed that out in a big document and bound it up, and put a CD in the back of it, and left that with the Society of Genealogists. And it's out of date now. That was probably 5 years ago, but I think that's probably not a bad idea. And maybe with the Devon Heritage Center, I think that Susie, I think they probably, you know, if you could do printed form and then put a CD in the back, you know, I've got most of my stuff in Excel and Word. Don't know about the website, really don't. It's not caught up. I think it's important to kind of get it up to date, but I guess I'd probably be more interested in preserving the basic data, because I think these websites and everything do change a lot. So I think I've got a lot of thinking to do, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and actually,
So I really appreciate that.
giving you some weekend tasks. Probably more than a weekend.
I'm not feeling very good about this at all at the moment, because people understand one-name studies, and I think my husband would even know contacts if he didn't want to carry on. He'd know people, you know, that we're in touch with, but the one-place study is a little bit different, and I don't really have a group, and there's I just don't have a good candidate of what might happen to it. So I think I'm with Susie. I think probably the Heritage Center record office might be the best bet, but I think you'd have to do some work to put it in a form that people could find it usable in the future.
Yeah, no, it sounds like getting a sort of published form of it might be the way to go.
And pulling together stories like we did with the military, or I'm trying to do with the migration. I think maybe that's maybe going to end up in the long run being the more helpful stuff
Mm, mm,
to people. But yeah, so I
mm.
like your link, talking about how things link together, because that's really not immediately obvious from looking at a file structure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the whole thing's quite a bit more challenging than I would have thought before I sat down to
Yeah.
pull all this together. Mm. And yeah, you always got the very best intentions of figuring out a plan and then you never quite do it. So hopefully this does give you some incentive to come up with a definite plan and start talking to people about it.
Yeah, I appreciate the ideas, but I think it's a bit of work to do.
I think the worry with archives and depositing with archives at the moment is that certainly in the UK, with cutbacks, they are not necessarily on the sturdiest of ground themselves. And a number of them who haven't recently been moved into wonderful new buildings are now never likely to be because there's no money. And so space is at a premium. And because what we're offering is not original material, it's not going to be very high up the priority list, and they may actually say, well, we haven't got space for this, we don't want it.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, so again, trying to get it published to the out in the hands of the wider public.
Do the
Is the
family
way to go.
societies, get involved in this kind of stuff at all?
Sorry, Kim?
Do the family history societies get involved in this kind of stuff?
I think some certainly do, but
Some do,
again,
some definitely
yeah,
don't.
it's going to depend on. I mean, some have premises, and they're more likely to be keener on taking things. What they're not going to want is, 1,500 huge, great box files of bits of paper, but something fairly succinct, they may well take. And as Alex has said, something that is organised. It's not just piles and piles of random bits of paper that need some kind of pulling together, organising, identifying first. I think that's the danger. It's got to be a finished product really before they're likely to be willing to take it on, unless you're going to leave them a thundering great legacy to go with it, and then they might be more interested, I suppose.
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen, Janet.
Yeah.
I'll give it some thought. What's everybody else up to?
Right, so does anyone have any thoughts about how easy it would be if someone had to come in and try and make sense of your materials, assuming they can get access to your files and things?
Currently, you can't even walk across my office, as Kim will vouch, having been to my house yesterday. So, although, I have children who know I do a one-place study,
It's going to go in the too hard basket, isn't it?
yeah, I think it might. I thought I'd done quite well with going around my house listing things of family significance, like, in the third drawer down there is this. It is not total rubbish. This is the significance of it. And on the fourth shelf, this hideous ornament is actually something, that you might want to keep, or at least sell because it's worth a few bob, even if it doesn't look like it. And I did that and sent it to one of my daughters, together with the message in an email saying, here, I've started. This started when my mother died, and I realised that I thought I knew what things were, and in actuality I didn't. And I sent her this email saying, here, I've done the living room. Of course, now I have to not move anything in the living room, because otherwise this makes no sense. And then in the same email I said, I'm going to Weston-super-Mare at the weekend. And she came back and said, is Weston-super-Mare that dangerous? Because she thought I was about to disappear off this earth, I think. But no. And I have tried to keep that up. But I've just today emptied a quarter of my loft, which means I now can't move in my bedroom either. And I'm seeing that there's a fair more amount of stuff that I need to throw away. And I said to them, you're going to throw this away when I'm dead. I might as well throw it away now. Just checking you don't want it.
Yeah.
But
I think unless you've actually had the experience of trying to sort through things after someone has died, whether that's, you know, family members or someone else. I think once you've done that, you've got an appreciation for how difficult it is and the kind of things you could do to make it a bit easier, particularly if there's valuable things that you don't want to go, well, not missing, but not to be appreciated for what they are.
No, quite.
Yeah.
I see a comment in from Susie because I think she's not able to talk with us at the moment. And it says, perhaps our society should be taking the lead on how to do this.
Well, we can certainly come up with some ideas. At the moment, we don't have capacity to actually store physical paper, but there may well be something we can do. I could put in a plug here for people doing their in-depth studies, couldn't I? Because really, at least that is some kind of permanent presence for bits of your one-place study. And it's a little bit more than just your study profile. It's not everything you've ever indexed by a very long way, but at least it would be something that would be there. However, at the moment, the presence of that on our website relies on you being a paid up member. So maybe we need to think about that and how we might be able to help for studies that are perhaps no longer active, rather than studies where people just haven't renewed their subs, which I think is a bit of a different matter.
Yeah, I think if we were aware that members had passed away and we did have sort of material of theirs in our possession, like those in-depth studies, I think we'd certainly try and preserve those.
Oh, I think so, yes.
For them. Yeah, that would be.
We might also find ways to see if others might express what I call a long-term interest in member studies. So, for example, there's a lot of us doing studies down in Devon, you know. Maybe somebody in the society or somebody they know might have some interest in, you know, rat and clovelly in the long term. Should, you know, why not want to or be able to watch out for it anymore? We might, you know, at least kind of be a central place where you know, people could register kind of a longer term interest in places.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too the key is, if you know that in a year's time you're not going to want to do it anymore, it can be a controlled handover. So you could do something like look for people who've got research interests in your place and suggest that they at least take custody of what you've got, rather than expecting necessarily them to add to it. However, if you don't know that you're going to be about to drop dead, that's much more difficult. So perhaps what we should be doing is thinking, if I knew I had a year to hand over my one-place study, what would I do? And then at least writing that down for whoever's going to clear your house out, to say, you know, this is what, there is all this stuff here, this is what I suggest you try and do with it, i.e. contact the Family History Society, here is their address, contact these 3 other people who I know are vaguely interested in this place because I've been corresponding with them, and rather than just leaving it for them to work it out.
Yeah, I think, Alex, you, I can't remember very well now, I didn't have it memorized, but you had the article on Till Death Do Us Part.
Mm-hmm.
I think that my recollection is that talk plan might consist of.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it might be good just to have some example plans out there of the steps that people would take. And I know it would differ, you know, if you've got a predominantly digital study or physical study, I understand that, but sometimes it helps to have, you know, some sample rather than kind of staring at this clean sheet of paper and becoming mind boggled.
Yeah, no,
There have been a number of templates online about how to do things with your family history and how to pass that on. So that might be I think there's one on the Devon Family History Society website from memory. And it's about what to put in your will, so maybe that would be helpful, or at least have an idea.
Yeah.
I think that the family there's a slight difference. If you have a group that you're working with on your one-place study, I can see that. If you don't, then to me the family history is just a little bit different, because I've got cousins, I've got, like my husband knows the people we talk with about our one name studies, and there are people, 5 or 10 people who are really, quite interested and involved in that kind of stuff. It's a little bit different with a place study.
One thing on the who is possibly you might not know who's out there interested taking on your study until you actually put the words out there saying, hey, I'm actually thinking about the long-term planning. Is there anyone else here who might be interested? Because people won't want to step on your toes.
So just put it on your website or wherever you're advertising.
Yeah, people will say, right, you're doing this one place study. No, obviously I can't do anything on it now because you're already doing it. So they'll stay away from thinking about it until you put the idea in their mind.
Right, and I think we've got, like, down in, like, Devon and Cornwall, and I think a number of places, we've got things like the online parish clerks, too.
Yeah.
Who associate themselves with a particular place, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
I guess the danger there is that if someone's been waiting to leap in, they might want to leap in a bit too soon, and you might not quite want them to be that actively involved. It might be seen as a green light to come in and take over completely when perhaps you're not quite ready for that. But you're back to the ability to share, aren't you? And some of us are better at it than others.
Yeah, you can figure out a way to play nicely together, I'm sure.
Yeah, I could see some advantages if I found somebody really eager to dig in. I can think of what we could do together.
And you will get a lot more done working if there's more of you working on it. So it does actually make more sense.
Maybe they'd write my blogs,
Yeah. All right, we're nearly at an hour now. So has anyone got any further thoughts or questions I want to throw in while we're here? No, everyone's quiet. Everyone's gone back to the somber note we started on, feeling a bit depressed about how much work they've got in front of them to plan for this. So good. Okay, so we've obviously given everyone some food for thought there. Thanks for joining us, everyone who's here. Thanks for watching, all of you out there. The recording of this Hangout will appear on our YouTube channel, so you can re-watch it anytime. Do tell all your friends about it in case they missed it. Our next few Hangouts coming up, we have one very, very soon next week, I believe. Janet,
Yes.
Is that right? Yes.
Next week it will be one of the other migration Hangouts, and we will be talking about how our migration projects have progressed since we started them in January, or not, and some of our findings and so on. So it'll be a bit of a chat this time next week.
Lovely. So I'm sure all our members who have been working on their migration projects will want to catch that hangout, as well as the general public out there who wants to see what we're up to. After that, we're actually mixing things up a bit, and our next hangout isn't going to be at our usual Friday 8 p.m. British time slot. We're going to be at a slightly different time, so watch out for the details of that. So I think that about wraps it up. So thank you, everyone.
Thank
you very much, Alex. That's great. Thank you.